welcome to April's edition of Fintech Firebrand. I'm Virginie O'Shea, founder of Firebrand Research, and I'm here to chat to you about all this month's FinReg and FinTech news. Now, it's been an interesting month on the European front. We've had a lot of consultations, as always, from the European regulatory corner. One of the most interesting ones, I guess, from the European Commission standpoint is the exploration of a central bank digital currency, or CBDC. So at the moment, they're exploring how the euro could be transformed into a CBDC in the future. And they're asking the industry to comment and give their opinions on all of the different impacts that this might have across the financial services sector, including both payments and securities. So should be an interesting comment period. I look forward to reading some of the submissions from the industry members. The European Commission is also looking at a digital finance platform that they have high expectations for. So there was the announcement of those plans earlier this month. We had a number of the ESMA members as well discussing it in various public forums, where sort of the concept of having a single platform that you can access a range of different information, data, communications in one place for firms and their regulators. So it's the concept is about bringing together the industry and financial regulators together to share information. So big ambitions for this new platform from the EU FinReg crowd. So we'll see where it goes, but certainly a lot of debate across the industry about the benefits and the challenges of such a platform. Another big EU regulatory development was the final publication of the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, or SFDR, by the European Commission. It has been a long, I think, year and a half now of debate amongst the European regulators about the various aspects of SFDR. We've still got some questions remaining from the industry and probably from a regulatory perspective as well, about the various aspects of SFDR, but progress is being made. That's certainly good for the industry because we have a fast growing ESG industry, and there have been some wobbles on that front with regard to valuations and whether we're in a bit of a bubble when it comes to some of the green bonds, for example. So certainly the more clarity we get from the FinReg front, the more that will help in terms of clarifying exactly what goes into the ESG bucket and what should be excluded from it, which will help build confidence in the sector as well. On the US FinReg front, we've had a lot of discussion. We've had a lot of appointments as well. We've got 2 new SEC commissioners that have been approved, and we've got 3 new CFTC commissioners. So we've got fully staffed organizations at the top of the US FinReg food chain. So certainly that has sparked a lot of activity from the various chairs in terms of engagement with the industry. There's been a lot of talk about by Gensler and Benham about their plans for the coming year. Obviously, we're now 4 months into it, so certainly a lot of it has been achieved so far, particularly on the SEC's front, with lots of consultations that have gone out over the last month or so. So it has been busy already, but certainly they have ambitious plans for tackling a lot of different FinReg topics. Now, there's also been a lot of discussion in the crypto universe about whether another independent regulatory body needs to be set up to deal with the crypto markets, including digital assets, one would assume, and also tokenized assets. So whether this is warranted, given we already have a relatively complex regulatory structure at the US level, is something that should be considered. Whether we need the expense and the overheads of another regulator is something that I think the industry should bear in mind very carefully. Largely because we've got a lot of regulators already. It's relatively complex to navigate, and those regulators really should be cooperating with each other rather than arguing about these topics. So one would hope that there will be a framework that those regulators can use to work and cooperate together. Otherwise, we'll end up with another regulator, which will make it even more complicated to navigate from a financial institution perspective. One interesting dynamic of note as well, there was a large blockchain conference, or Bitcoin conference, I should say. I often confuse the two, but they are very separate. There was a big Bitcoin conference in Miami last week, during which one of the sort of, much lauded and also very controversial fintech founders, Peter Thiel, took to the stage to sort of talk about who he believes is holding back the development of crypto and digital assets across the global financial markets. And he pointed to a number of people that represent what he called the financial gerontocracy, who he believes are, wielding things like ESG in opposition to crypto. So that dynamic between ESG on one side and crypto on the other is an interesting dynamic to note within the financial services community. There seems to be some conflict between the proponents of either community. So there doesn't seem to be as much crossover as people would like to see, although there are some combined efforts where certain fintechs are trying to develop digital assets with a view to being greener in the future. So and distributed ledger platforms that have a more green have more green credentials. So there are obviously some crossovers, but there does seem to be some degree of conflict between the two universes. So it will be interesting to see how this develops over the coming 12 months as well. We also had a frankly bonkers paper from the EU, actually from the arts side of it, looking at the potential of the metaverse. Now, everybody has been talking about the metaverse over recent months. We've seen JP Morgan set up its own metaverse branch, and other banks are going the same routes. Whether those have proved actually very useful for anything at all is to be questioned. Why JP Morgan has a tiger wandering around its virtual branches beyond me, but certainly the EU's paper was exploring the potential and discussed the topic of 6G, where we will be able to smell, taste and feel things from across virtually from across the globe. Now, it's an interesting concept. How long it takes for our technology to sort of accelerate to the pace where we can actually have a low latency experience and experience these things with the bandwidth that we would require to experience this kind of stuff, given the metaverse at the moment looks like something from a 90s film, is something to be questioned as well. But certainly it's interesting to see some of the perspectives that are coming out, and whether it lives up to the hype is one thing that I will be interested to see over the coming years. Now, my final thoughts for the month. I've spent a lot of time out and about over the last few weeks. I've been to a number of conferences. I've got out and chatted to people, which makes a nice change from being stuck on Zoom and Teams all day. But certainly some of the conversations I've had have been fascinating, as always. And a lot of the discussion has centered around how we develop technology, how we think about transformation, and digital transformation continues to be a buzzword within the industry at large. Often we seem to be putting the technology before the business problems. And now this is something that I think everybody will agree is the wrong way around. Certainly technology in fintech is very useful when applied correctly. But when we're putting together a transformation program, we really should be focusing on business outcomes and operational issues. We should be mapping out what the landscape currently looks like and our target operating model before we start thinking about what technology should be used and how it should be deployed. Largely because if you are deploying technology without a good handle on exactly the problems you're trying to fix, you can end up in a bit of a mess a few months down the road or a few years down the road, depending on the length of the program. So certainly I've had some fascinating conversations with firms that have started on that journey, have managed to engage their business users, have managed to avoid any kind of resentment from the business side about the program of work that's been sort of bucketed under the innovation banner. So that's certainly another thing to bear in mind, is the cultural aspects of digital transformation and change. Rarely is it just the technology that needs to change. If we're trying to break down silos, for example, they are as much cultural and operational as they are technological. So certainly that is a big area of focus. I'm going to be spending a lot more time talking to people about it over the coming months, and expect more research from Firebrand on that topic too as we go forward.